Welcome to Shop Talk Live episode number 241. Today, Mike and I are joined by the one and only Vic Teslin. And we're going to discuss lots of things. We're going to discuss dust collectors versus dust extractors, whether it's worth spending the time and money to upgrade an old table saw. And we discuss organizing our shops and if they're ever truly done. Say discuss one more time. And right at the end, we discuss social media and how to be polite and respectful on social media. I want to let everyone know that our newest project guide just hit the website this week. It's titled Tables and Desks, and it's filled with tables and desks. Believe it or not. Say tables and desks again! 105 articles and 117 videos, last I counted. It's a guided tour of our favorite content on finewoodworking.com about tables and desks. Oh, come on! Project guides. Head on over finewoodworking.com/project-guides. All right, on with the show after word from our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Maverick Abrasives. Maverick is a family-run company that's been making sanding belts and discs for woodworkers in the USA for 30 years. With Maverick, you're buying factory direct, so you're likely to save a lot of money. I just looked around my shop at the various abrasives that I use, and I did the math. If I bought everything directly from Maverick, I would save around 40% on my sanding discs and belts. Maverick has all of the popular size belts and discs in stock on their website, but they can also make any custom sizes that you might need. Check out their website at maverickabrasives.com or give one of their owners, Garrett, a call at 714-646-3299 and use the code FINEWOODWORKING. That's one word, FINEWOODWORKING, for 10% off your order. Again, that's maverickabrasives.com and the code is FINEWOODWORKING. So Vic, you have a big old tree that came down in your front yard.
Yeah.
What's the plans there?
Well, it was a big elm tree, and it was like leaning very dangerously over the house. And so the tree guys, the arborists came, and that was fantastic to watch. That guy climbing up in the tree with all his rigging, and he had like this little battery operated still chainsaw, and they would just keep throwing batteries up at him, as he needed them. It's no different than gas, right? They would like bring the gas can up to him, He would fill up, except that he's not up there doing this. So, but yeah, they took it down. They had to crane it out because of where it was. They couldn't just drop it. So the longest piece I've got is the main trunk, which is only 6 feet. Because elm trees apparently are notorious for having a ton of moisture in them. Okay. And so the crane was it was everything it could do to lift it.
Wow. Okay.
But anyway, so the sawyer came yesterday, and we loaded up the pieces. There's 4 or 5 pieces that we're going to saw up. And then I've got a bunch of limb material that I just kind of buck to, about 16 inches or so for turning blanks if anybody wants them, or, I can split them out and get small boards out of them and stuff. So we'll see what happens. This is the first time I've ever done this, where I've had a tree and then, going to take it all the way to furniture. So it's pretty exciting for me.
Are you going to have it kiln dried or just sticker it for a couple of years?
Well, the sawyer has a kiln.
Okay.
And so I think I'm going to do that. I might keep a couple of pieces air dried just for bending and things like that. But
right, sure.
But I think for the majority, I'll probably do it kiln dried. So
I've never worked with elm.
I haven't either. What is that like?
Well, apparently it's a little bit cantankerous. It's it can have a road grain, and it's pretty tough stuff. And it's not. And when it dries, apparently it's notorious for kind of twisting and stuff. So you have to be really careful about how you do it. But this guy seemed to know how to do it. So, and yeah, I've never worked with elm before either, so I have no idea what I'm into. But another friend of mine up here has built a lot of furniture with it, and he seemed to be okay. I don't know if he uses hand planes much, but so it's probably likely it might be a sanding situation. But
okay,
isn't elm one of those species that there was a blight or something a while back? And that's why we're not seeing many.
Yeah, Dutch elm
disease.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, which Yeah, it's unfortunate that the Dutch are getting blamed.
So I think of it. I think of it as maybe like an open grain wood, kind of tough, like ash or something, and like good for bending.
Yep. Yeah, it's supposed to be good for bending. I think it used to get used for like traditional chair parts a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. It's not something that is sort of in my realm of experience, but we'll find out. And if it's garbage, then I've got a fire pit.
There you go.
Yeah.
When they brought the tree down, of course, it's all like the guy with the most experience had been climbing for 10 years, and he was still under 30. And so these guys are all like strong back young bucks. And then I get out there and I'm like trying to I'm getting in the way is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm just so darn interested that I can't stay away from it. And so, that next morning my back was sore. And then this morning, oddly enough, after doing like we did, I'm just looking at the pile there. I'm just trying to figure out, there's got to be at least a couple of cords there of limbwood that I bucked up with the chainsaw, and then my Andrea and I moved it. But my forearms from grabbing logs and moving them and stuff, they're just screaming today. It's like, my God, when did I get so freaking old?
It's called the pandemic.
Well, I figured I told Andrea, I said, you know what, we should start up a new business where we have a gym, but all you do is you move our logs around. It's I like them over here. I like them over there,
Oh, you have to split these.
Yeah, exactly.
This is your CrossFit for the day.
It's just like the old days in prison where they'd make you move the big pile of rocks from one spot in the yard to the other spot in the yard.
Yeah, what's that movie, The Last Castle or something?
Yeah. Now you get cable.
All right, let's answer some questions.
All right.
You ready, Mike?
Ready.
All right. Question number 1, and I've already screwed up, and I don't have the name. Let's see. My next purchase will either be a new jointer or better dust collection solution. While a new joiner is more exciting, my dust collection is pitiful right now and consists of a shop vac I found in my basement. I'm looking at either a new Cyclone, he's looking at a Grizzly that Anissa reviewed, or a Festool dust extractor. I know these are kind of two different things, but they cost about the same, so I will have to pick one or the other. Which do you think would be better to get first? I have a table saw, jointer, planer, bandsaw, and all the hits, but I also use my compact router a lot. My inclination is a dust collector. That a dust collector would do more for me, but I would be interested in hear y'all's take on dust collection. If fancy dust extractors are really worth the cost over a typical shop vac.
Yeah, you're talking two different things.
Yeah.
It's you're either talking high pressure, low volume, or high volume, low pressure. So it's like if you have a little straw and you try to blow through it, you can't get a lot of air through there, but the air that comes out is moving pretty quick. If you try to blow through a paper towel roll, it's super easy, but there's not a lot of built up pressure. So that's the difference between a shop vac and a dust collector. Dust collector is high volume, lower velocity, but enough velocity to move the chips out of the machine in the hose through the impeller into your chip bag. A shop vac is really good for working in, smaller enclosed spaces and pulling a lot of chips out of a small place. For instance, a router or dust from a sander or a chop saw. So here's the thing. You can't really get around a dust collector in terms of, you can pay a lot more for a dust collector than, say, a Grizzly. I'm not sure you could really pay a whole lot less. But in terms of a shop vac, the Festool stuff is pretty cool. The cool thing about the dust extractor is it's got a plug-in. So basically, you plug your tool into the shop vac, you plug the shop vac into the wall. So when you start the tool, the shop vac starts. That's kind of cool. I do like that. But you are paying a lot for that. You can get around that by buying a pretty inexpensive shop vac and then just get a little box. I think it's only like 30 or 40 bucks from Woodcraft or wherever that plugs into the wall, and it's got 2 outlets. So you plug in your shop vac and say your chop saw into it. So when you start your chop saw, the shop vac starts. That's really cool for stationary stuff. So that's what I have. Super cheap little shop vac with my chop saw and the little box you plug both into, so it's auto start. If you're moving around and stuff, it's probably a little less practical, but you're talking, I don't know, maybe $150 investment for a shop vac and the switch versus what, $350 to $500 for a auto start shop vac. So I don't know. I mean, they're both good, but you can get around a dust extractor for a long time. If you have the big machinery, I would start with a dust collector. I think that's going to do a lot for you.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think I think you need both. I think, but you can. And the other thing too is that with a big dust collector, like whatever size it happens to be, 1 or 2 horse or whatever, you can always stop down the outlet or inlet, I guess, right? And so I've had where I take it from like 4 to 2.5, right, and then take it down even further, and so that will speed up your air coming into the machine. And so, but you can't exhaust a bandsaw or a thickness planer with a Festool dust extractor, right? It will just choke it. So that just on that alone, I think it makes sense to do the dust collector first. I like your idea, Mike, about the sort of getting a traditional shop vac and then adding, I think it's called iVac or something, is the little box that
that's
the yellow box. Yeah.
And then I've also done it as well, where I plug the vacuum into, like, you can buy those cheap remote control outlets. You get them at like Walmart, I think, for like $20 or something.
You get for Christmas lights, right?
Yeah. And so you can just turn
landscaping lights. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So you can just turn it on and off, and you can just, you know what I mean? So you're going to turn your tool on at the spot.
Right.
But then if you hit that switch, then your vacuum starts.
That's cool. That's what I do with my dust collector. It doesn't have a remote switch. I just got the little thing from Home Depot. Yeah, it's like $20 and plug it into wall, and it works really well.
I had that I also did that with my air compressor, because I had the air compressor in another room because all I had was one of those little pancake jobs.
Oh, right.
And those things are so loud.
Yeah.
So I had it in another room and then punched a hole in the wall for the hose to come out. And then when I needed air, I would just hit, like, right beside the wall where the hose came out was the remote. Cool. So I just, boop, and away it went. So
at the old shop, we had a big old 220 compressor, and it must have been a John White edition. He had one of those little spring timers, where you just turn the dial, like on a light switch. And the moment I saw that, I was like, that is the most genius thing I've ever seen, because I used to leave my compressor running all the time in our basement, and it'd go off at 3:00 in the morning, and my wife would kill me. Like, it's the only time she's ever been really mad at me, I think, somehow. So I got one of those for my compressor here, and I had an outlet dedicated to the compressor. 2 months later, realized, oh no, I want the compressor over there in the other room. And so I need to set that back up. But, I love having a timer on the compressor for that very reason. It's just, I need air, click it on. An hour later, you don't need it. I was going to say, I have a Festool CT32 or 36 or whatever, and I don't have a big dust collector. And I think it works for me, but I don't use my table saw that often. If I was like Mike and I use my table saw, you use your table saw every day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, Mike and his table saw are much tighter than me and my table saw. The only time that I sit there and be like, I need to get some dust collection in here, is when I use my table saw a lot.
Mm.
My planer, I don't do it that often. I have a dust deputy that I'll hook into the Festool, which I think you're technically not supposed to do because static or whatever. But
Anything to void the warranty.
yeah, that does handle my planer pretty well. It handles my surface, my drum sander really well. My jointer just goes into a box. I don't care about that.
Right.
Bandsaw could be handled by a shop vac. I have a very small dust collector hooked up to it. And I think instead of getting a big dust collector, I think I'm going to get a small dust collector to go under my table saw. And I think once I get that, I think I'm good. So
there's that whole argument about, do you get like a few small machines, dust collectors, and then have them at specific machines? Like Mike had mentioned about the at the chop saw, he's got a vacuum there that's dedicated basically to that.
Right.
That versus a big machine that you have to like plumb all the, you know what I mean? It's like in Europe, like they don't have big water tanks. In the kitchen, they have a small water tank. Okay. In the bathroom, they have a small water tank. And then you turn it on before you go for a shower, go make your coffee, and then the water's hot. You know what I mean? So it makes sense, like, as opposed to this big honking thing, because then you get like, if you've ever read that book on dust collection that Sandor wrote, like, you'd be like, oh my God, I'm losing what, where, and like, all the math, and oh my goodness. So I think there's some value to having individual small machines.
Yeah. So Vic, you're setting up your shop, and dust collection tends to be something you do think about at that point in time. What kind of strategy are you going with?
So I surrounded my dust collector with the big three. So I have the table saw there, the joiner planer, and the bandsaw. Okay. Which makes it so that there's a maximum, and there's 3 inlets on the machine. It's a 2 horsepower cyclone.
Right. And
so I basically have one hose going into each. All around the cluster there, I have blast gates that I can open and close.
Yep.
So my longest run is 10 feet, and there's no severe bends in it. So I'm getting wicked dust collection. And on the smaller stuff, I also have a Festool vacuum because I normally wouldn't do that, but because I sort of drank the Festool Kool-Aid, I have the Domino, a sander, a track saw, a couple routers, and so just even the frustration of getting the hose connectors to hook up to it right and all that other stuff. Yeah. And I just got a Bosch 12-inch chop saw, and I was so stoked to find out that it's the same connector. Yeah. So I can it literally like plugs into the side, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. So I like, if I didn't have the Festool stuff, I would likely go with, anything else really that wasn't, a squazillion dollars, but
right.
But yeah,
there's an elegance to the interconnectivity of the Festool tools.
It's like an iPhone.
It is, yeah.
It all works. If you work in that environment, it all talks to each other. It's seamless. Whereas I used to be an Android guy, and oh my God, you pull your hair out trying to get stuff to talk to it and all that other stuff.
Here comes the hate mail, Vic.
What?
Woodworkers with Androids, the most vocal group.
Are they?
Ever. Yes.
Oh, I never heard them. Maybe I just ignore them.
The thing that I love about high-end vacs, because there are others besides Festool. Bosch makes a great one. There was the little Porter cable that we used to have that was nice. Fine.
Porter cable's nice. I think DeWalt has auto start.
Yep.
Fine.
I think once they're labeled a dust extractor, the price tag goes up. But the thing that I would have a hard time switching back to a shop vac is the volume.
Oh, yeah.
Because shop vacs they're the loudest thing in a shop.
Yeah.
Well, a good one is.
Yeah.
It's like you turn on the little Festool extractor. It's like, this can't be working. This is not nearly loud enough.
Yeah. So it isn't even like the auto switch and all that stuff. It's the volume for me that is just really, really, that's worth it. Yeah. So I think for me, it comes down to there is no right or wrong answer, but you're going to wind up getting both eventually, right?
Right. Yeah. I think like judging from what tools this fellow has, like I would get the main dust collector first. And if you want to stop it down so that you can get it onto a router, right? It's a little bit less convenient, but it can be done. But you can't necessarily do it the other way around. So.
Yeah. And that question's from Thomas. I just looked.
Oh,
thank you.
Awesome.
Thomas.
Good question, Tom.
Yeah. Good question with no
Thomas.
real answer.
Oh, Thomas, pardon me.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I have to tell my Thomas story because all right, when I first started working at the magazine, my son was like obsessed with Thomas the Tank, right? Well, I walked up to Tom McKenna to ask him something, and our books editor, Peter, was there, and I didn't know him. And I walked up to Tom McKenna. I said, Thomas. And I did it with a British accent because my son is always watching Thomas the Tank. And then Peter started talking and he's British. And I was like, oh no, he thinks I'm mocking him. So anytime I see the word Thomas, the name Thomas, I have like that little cringe factor. And like, there's that time that I mocked Peter. What's his last name?
Peter Chapman.
Peter Chapman. Yeah.
One of the nicest, most genuine people you will ever meet. But you don't want him on your bad side.
Okay. I haven't experienced
so Ben's
that.
making fun of him. That's awesome. You ever watch somebody call Michael Fortune Mike?
Oh no. What does it go down?
It goes down.
Oh,
it's like
man.
it's like it's like head snaps over. It's Michael.
I'm going to leave the room right now.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to have a hard time not testing that now. You know that, right? Like next time, I'm going to poke the bear.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can. You've been warned.
All right, listen. Question number 2 is from Joshua. I have been a hobbyist woodworker for 20 or so years now. As my projects have moved more in the direction of fine woodworking, I'm starting to see the shortcomings of my existing table saw, specifically the fence. Is it worth spending the time in the shop to improve the usability of the saw, mounting the saw into a frame and adding an outfeed table, making a crosscut sled, and trying to find ways to get straight cuts without a fence? Or should I start saving for something now? There are no aftermarket fences available for this saw. It's an older Craftsman 3 horsepower. And I've had to grind the safety nubs off of the miter slots in order to make any kind of sled runners. I've been there, Joshua. There is a very specific vintage of saw out there that they have little nubs in the miter slots so that you can only use the factory miter fence or miter gauge, which
What kind of dirty trick is that?
Well, and it's a dangerous trick if you ask me. And I got rid of my my first table saw because of it. I was not as smart as Joshua and was like, oh, it's aluminum. I'll grind it off. But yeah. So that's what's going on there. Because I saw, Vic, you were very confused by that one.
Yeah, I never even heard of that before.
It's bizarre.
Okay.
Yeah. So, is it worth diving in?
I think that it's, a 3 horsepower saw is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's a decent powered saw. But yeah, you're going to get into a lot of time and effort to kind of, get this thing sort of to a point where it's, like a modern saw, and so I guess it's all a matter of like what you want to spend your time doing. Like some people really enjoy that kind of stuff, like making a stand and then making, and then figuring out how to it's usually an engineer that, enjoys like doing that kind of stuff. That would just frustrate me, to have to dedicate all that time to getting that sorted out. You know, and it's funny, I recently got a table saw for the first time. I haven't owned a table saw in 10 years. And then my buddy Steve upgraded to a saw stop. And so he gave me it's like a vintage Delta contractor saw, but it's got the unifence and the whole, like, you know,
Nice.
all the nice bells and whistles that used to come with a Delta saw.
Yeah.
Not an ounce of safety equipment on it, which always gets interesting comments on Instagram. It's like, but there's no riving knife. And I'm like, it's plywood. But anyway, we won't get into that because, of course, you want to see hate mail start coming through. It's like, God, infringe on a perceived safety violation, and they're all over you. But yeah, so it's got like an open base to it, which makes it impossible to dust collect, really.
Sure. Right.
And then the motor hangs out the back, and it's like a gravity sort of tensioning system and all that other stuff. And it's like, I'm different to Mike, where Mike uses a table saw a lot, whereas I don't. I got so accustomed to using track saws and that kind of thing that it's in there because it was free. But if I had to start, and I thought about it, I was like, okay, well, I can improve the dust collection if I take it off the stand, put it on the seal the back, blah, blah, blah. I think Fine Woodworking actually had an article showing how to like seal in the back of like a contractor saw or whatever.
Yes.
And
you don't want to do that.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, it's a complete nightmare. And, plus like airflow and all that other stuff. So my vote is like, use it how it is right now and just save up your pennies for, something that's a little bit more modern.
Yeah, I agree. I think, depending on your budget and your inclinations, you can get this thing to work and do the decent work you want. And your point, Vic, is great. It's that notion of like, there's no such thing as a single ideal shop for everybody, because it depends on what you're doing and what you demand of your tools. So, yeah, I think that's a really good thing. Like, yeah, what are you using a table saw for? Does everybody need a 3-horse commercial saw stop table saw? No, they're awesome. And if you're on it every single day, there might be an argument for it, but depending how you work, maybe not. I remember teaching at Phil Lowe's shop, who's, obviously one of the consummate craftsmen of any generation. And I go to use his table saw, and it's like, Phil, where's your table saw blade? Oh, I think I got one hanging up on the wall over there. And it was the most beat, burnt, just ugly looking blade I've ever seen. It's just because he doesn't depend on his table saw for any final stuff. It's just rough stuff, and everything is just, you go by hand from there. Whereas I treat the tool in a completely different fashion. And so it just depends on what you're in it for, what you want from that tool. So, yeah, I think it depends on how you're working. It's the way you work will determine the tools you get, and then the tools you have tends to determine the way you work too. So it is sort of a symbiotic thing where you can get stuck into certain methods based on the tools you have, which may or may not be a positive thing. But at the same time, that's not a one size fits all. This is the best, so go buy this because it's the best. It's not. I don't think that's a good way to go either.
So I was in a situation similar to this. I went, and it was like an old benchtop saw, actually. And I bought like the little table that you put it in, and you used that as a fence, and it had a T-square fence and everything. But then I got rid of it because of the nubs on the miter slot, like I said, and also because I was looking for an excuse to get rid of that table saw. Let's be honest. Right. I was like, I eyed up those nubs. And I said, honey, this is why I need to spend more money on a table saw. And there was definitely...
that's woodworker math right there.
Yes. Woodworker math. I like that. But that said, Mike, besides a good fence, what's the difference between a high-end table saw and a not high-end table saw?
A fence is definitely a good thing. I think it's the amount of vibration in the blade and the run out, meaning is the arbor such that the blade is spinning square or is it wobbling? That's a huge thing. Vibration is also going to sort of mimic arbor runout as well, and that is not going to give you a super clean cut. Mass is a pretty good thing. Again, that's going to help with vibration. Certain amount of power is good. I think it depends. I mean, you want a saw which is super true. You want to be able to align your miter gauge slots perfectly parallel with your blade. If you can't do that, I don't think that's a saw that's going to be very useful for you. And you should be able to get your fence adjusted, a precise distance away from the blade and parallel to the blade at the same time. If you can't do both of those at once easily, that's going to impact just the usability of the tool, the amount of time you're going to spend, the problems you're going to have with the saw, and probably the amount that you're actually going to end up using the saw. So yeah, accurate rip fence that you can adjust, a tabletop that you can adjust square to the blade, a blade that spins true without a lot of vibration. I think that's it. And that's not that difficult. Like you said, an old Delta contractor saw can handle all those things pretty well. So,
and we've all been in those situations where you're using a saw that isn't those things.
Yes.
And it gives you that funny feeling in your bathing suit area when you're putting wood across the blade. Where you can feel things are moving, things are vibrating, things aren't as solid as you would like them to be.
Yeah.
And then that just, that kills it for me. It's like, that's no good.
There's a lot going on here as I'm making this.
Yeah. I'm worrying about too many variables right now. Yeah.
Well, and even like those old fences, remember the ones that they used to mount on a rail, like on a round rail?
A tube, yeah.
Tube. And then you would always have to measure like in front of the blade and behind the blade, and then do dodgy things like tap it with a hammer or something to get it to come in. And it's like, this is not good.
Yeah, that's called every Delta Unisaw made until Biesmeyer started making their aftermarket fences. I had one of those, and it was like a nightmare. Yeah, it's like measure, square it up, measure again. Okay, I'm within a 1/16 of an inch. Let's go. Yeah, what a nightmare.
Did this one come with a tube fence?
Yeah,
Mike?
It did.
Okay.
Fact,
thank you for upgrading it.
And because the Unisaw, that was the industry standard for home shops forever. And it was such a horrendous fence that really prompted sort of an aftermarket rip fence industry. And so at some point, I think we got like 10 Unisaws in. Everybody we knew that had a Unisaw that hated their fence, they like donated their saw to the shop for 4 months. And so we could do a review of every single fence on the market. And there was a bunch. I mean, it's amazing how many different solutions there were at the time. And so that's how I ended up with that fence on there. That came out of that review. But then I think the manufacturers started first offering the Biesmeyer fence as an option, and then it just became standard. And now that's the industry standard. So there's really no such thing as aftermarket rip fences anymore. But yeah, that was a big thing.
But you are putting an aftermarket fence on a great saw.
Exactly. Right.
Not putting a great fence on a bad saw.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Should we hit our segments? Should we do all-time favorites right now? Vic, I didn't give you much time to come up with something this week. Vic's a trooper. He's doing this on 1 day notice.
Yeah. Well, when you got nothing going on.
When you're locked down.
yeah. When you're stuck at home. Oh, goodness. Okay. I forgot about the segment, but I got a good one. Battery-powered chainsaw. So
do you have one, or have you just?
I do. I have one. I have one. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I got it because I like being able to take things like 12-quarter boards if I've got them, and then be able to buck them to rough length before they come into the shop.
Yeah.
And I don't own anything else that is suitable for that size. You know, my track saw is a 55, so it does 8/4, not 12/4. I thought about one of those Prezi kind of you use a worm gear saw, and then it's got a chainsaw bar that sticks out from the bottom. That just looks terrifying. Yes. And so it's like, so I have a bunch of DeWalt stuff, and just because I've kind of always had that battery system, and that's the one I've gone with. But I picked up one of their 16-inch bar DeWalt battery operated chainsaws, and so. I was happy when the arborist looked at it and went, "Oh yeah, these are pretty good." And I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay." Now his was a steel, but it had a shorter bar. It was like what they call a climbing saw, which is ideal for climbing in trees. You know, you don't want a 50-inch bar hanging off your hip, right?
Yeah.
Which was another terrifying thing to watch. They literally hook that on a tool belt when they're in the tree, and this like chainsaw is just hanging there, and it's like, okay. But anyway, I've been using it for the last couple of days to do a lot more than cutting up slabs, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how well it works.
I haven't thought about it for breaking down lumber because I don't have a chop saw. I don't have a jigsaw, believe it or not. And I don't have a cordless skill saw. I never want to break out the cord. So I rough crosscut my lumber with a handsaw. Like, you know, and it's fine, but there are days when it's like, oh man, this 8/4 and I got 3 or 4 of these to get through. This
8/4 white oak.
Yeah. This is not this is not what I signed up for. If that's your thing, great. It ain't my thing. But cordless chainsaw.
So I used to use a reciprocating saw, but again, the blades are far too small usually for that kind of work. They're just not.
Yeah.
They're just not designed for that sort of thing, and then the blade can wander and all that other stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so that cordless saw, it has like a 9 amp hour battery. It's like what they call flex volt, so it's like 20 volt and 60 volt, kind of one and the other. And then they've got, it worked out really well. I found it was the battery doesn't last very long. But it definitely is it definitely is good for like just the odd sort of job. If you were to like be bucking lumber with it all, like logs with it all day long, it's not the right choice, I don't think. And it was actually surprising too, when the battery dies, it doesn't just like, you know, it just stops.
Yeah, that's the lithium ion thing.
Yeah. So it's just cutting and then it stops. Yeah. Right. And then it's like, oh, okay, I need another battery. So, but the batteries are expensive. When you start getting into those like 60 volt flex batteries or whatever, they get a little pricey, but So anyway, so that's my favorite tool of all time for this weekend this week.
Okay. I've got a smooth move.
Ooh.
That last night my wife declared the day before Mother's Day. She said, "You know what I want to do for Mother's Day? I need this thing for my studio. We're going to build it on Sunday." I was like, she wants to spend Mother's Day in the shop? Heck yeah, this is great. One thing happened after another. We didn't get to do it, you know, and then I went and I got lumber, basically. And then she was like, "Listen, just get it done quick. That's really what I want. I just want this done quick. I don't want good looking. I don't want anything. I need a thing to put this thing and this thing, and that's it." And so I am making glorified Target furniture right now. It is, you know, sawed up 2x4s and 1x pine, the cheap stuff that I could find at Home Depot. Glued and brad nailed. But I was really proud of myself. I've got an hour and a half into this, and I was really proud of myself. I felt like I was using all of the things that I've learned from all y'all in the fine woodworkers that I hang out with, and working systematically and smart and like, okay, all of these 12-inch measurements were all cut off of the same fence setting. This is, it was very rough work, but still smart work.
Right.
And then there was this one measurement that I cut. I couldn't use the same fence setting because this or that, or stop block setting. And I did one rough cut and I said, okay, I'll come back later and nail that to size, and it's a melamine panel that I got off the side of the road months ago. So, I mean, we're talking high class fine woodworking here, right? But I never went back. I never went back to trim off that 1/16 of an inch that I knew in my heart I needed to trim off. I should have nailed the measurement right there. I should have done what we all know and just gotten it off the saw correctly. And then the glue starts flowing, and all of a sudden I'm saying, why is this piece not lining up? Why is this overhanging? Why is this, everything should be fine? And then I remembered, oh, you never went back to trim up this piece. And so even though this functional whatever is going to be entirely functional, it is going to haunt me for the end of time. And it's just because I decided to trim it later as opposed to just doing it now. So, yeah.
I think I've done that before.
Yes.
Yeah.
The things that haunt. Yes. It's like your Thomas incident. Like that just lives with you forever.
There it is. Every time I go let the dog out, I'm going to walk past this thing and that little corner, which I'm going to now have to just sand off or sand flush because I brad nailed it. So I can't hand plane it. I can't, this is, there's no chasing this into perfection. This is only hopefully just not. Oh, it's killing me right now.
Listen, Christian Bexford does a lot of really cool stuff with a belt sander. I'm serious. I know. He's the master of that thing, and I'd love to learn how to use that better. But I think that's the perfect tool for what you're describing there.
Yeah, I gave mine away. I had a Ryobi, like the $35 belt sander. I bought it, 20 years ago. And I was one of those fits of I haven't used this in 10 years and I'm a fine woodworker. And it went to the restore, the Habitat restore.
So what do you do now when it's race season? You just watch?
Random orbit sander races. You just plug them in race. And like 3 hours later, one's moved.
It falls through the panel.
We got to do that.
There you go.
We got to do that.
I'll put my 3 mil up against your 5 mil any day.
Somebody's gonna come in with 6-inch Rotex, and it's just
off it goes.
Gear, yes.
Yeah. Lock the hubs.
Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, I don't know what this is.
That's a good start.
Other than a gratuitous reference to the book that I'm writing.
You're writing a book?
I am.
Oh. Book.
So I made actually multiple pieces for the book. And if you're making a piece of furniture for an article or for a book, you get it just far enough to get the final shot. And then it's good. And what that means is sometimes there are drawers without drawer bottoms because you don't see them. And other times there are simply drawer fronts in place with no drawers, which is okay. Okay, I'm going to get back to that later.
Workbench.
So I have this sort of, I like it other than the fact that it's just drawer fronts, but I have a Tansu style cupboard with 7 drawers in it. And I had to bring it into the house in order to get the final shot. And once something comes into the house from the shop, it kind of means it's done, right? Like this is done. But it's got, there's like 7 drawer fronts sitting there. And every time I walk by, it just haunts me. And sometimes, obviously because of a drawer front, if it gets bonked or something, the alignment of the drawer front is like a little bit off. So I always go over and make sure that they're perfectly flush. So it looks like drawers. I don't know why I'm doing that, but the thought of now having to take that back in to the shop when mentally this piece is done and now I still have to back up and dovetail 7 drawers is it's just what a horrific thought. So I think that's going to be, I don't think I'm ever going to do any woodworking again in my life because I think this one thing will be standing in the way of actually doing anything new. So
I think you should just hot melt glue them in.
Just call it.
Yeah. Because, that'll keep them from tipping out. But you're not going to do it. Or we could come up with like some little sound effect thing that when you pull the empty drawer out, it just plays a wah, wah.
I think I'm just going to run a dovetail drawer class.
That's a smart idea. So either that or get the pocket hole jig out.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, we need a new hire at Fine Woodworking, apparently. Because when I came on, it was, hey, do you have a project going on? Look at that shaker workbench. It's just drawer fronts. Why don't you dovetail the drawers? And then we never put the drawer bottoms in. And when Barry came on, I was like, hey, why don't you put drawer bottoms in? And he was like, no. So.
Put your own drawers in.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. Have you heard about Festool USA's new cordless tool lineup? Festool packed top shelf performance and value in these tools. The TID18 impact driver and T18 easy drill driver both start at just $199. Festool's cordless line delivers the same power and consistency you'd expect from a corded tool, with the mobility to go wherever the task takes you. Festool tools are always packaged in the company's Sustainer organization and storage system. And this company stands behind their German-engineered products with a 3-year all-inclusive wear and tear warranty that covers the tool, battery, and charger. For more information, visit festoolusa.com/cordless.
I have a question for Vic.
Michael never let me get through a podcast with Vic the way I expect it to go.
So this has to do with, but it has to do with setting up shop, which seems to be the theme of the day. And Vic, you're in the process of setting up your shop. So I guess what I want to know are, it seems like there's 2 phases. One, you're either working on your shop or in your shop. So you get it as perfect as you can, but the minute you start working in it, however it is, it just stays that way forever. Mm-hmm. So like, where are you at? Are you still in the process of trying to create the ideal shop, or have you just said, nah, I got to get some work done?
So that's an awesome question because I've been telling students about this because it's the first time I'm doing it. I would always set up the shop, get it to a point where it's functional, and then work in it, and it would stay that way. And then I would just curse and swear about, oh, I wish I would have done that, or oh, I wish I would have did this, or whatever. But I don't have time, and so. Now with the COVID thing, I'm not traveling. I used to travel a whole ton. And so now I'm not. And so what I've started doing is that I set up the shop from my theoretical idea, right? And then as I started working, if something wasn't working the way I thought it should, or I figure I could be more efficient if I do it a different way, I just stop what I'm doing, address it, and then go back to what I was doing.
Cool.
And that has been really, really cool because things...
Does that extend into the rest of your life? Or is this... Because that sounds like a good thing in general.
It might. I'll let you know.
Or should we ask
20
Andrew?
years from now when we're so I retweak this. But so for example, and this is nothing to do with woodworking per se, but because of all the teaching I'm doing, it's all I need a whack of AV stuff.
Yeah.
And so I took a page out of the Ben Strano organization book, and I had this sort of traveling tool chest that I used to use, like one of those sort of T-stack type situations. And so I got sick and tired of trying to find where I put this and where I put that and all that other stuff. So I took an hour and I laid that thing out with all. So I've got one drawer that's got power stuff, HDMI stuff, audio stuff, which I couldn't find the cable today. So it's not infallible. But then I have like everything all laid out so that half an hour before I have to teach, I pull out all the equipment I need, hook it all up, and then everything's good. So I've been doing things like that. I also had this like chest of drawers that like, you know, those like, it's like a metal filing cabinet, except the drawers are only like this deep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they fit perfectly, those little plastic, you know, the Home Depot screw holders and that kind of thing. So as soon as I would be like, I did a project where I was using some nails and I opened up the drawer and there's nails everywhere and it's all a disaster. It's like, okay. So I just took a second, organized everything, got my little vintage label maker, you know.
Oh, you got one of the clicky clicks.
Yeah. Because like those fancy printout ones, those are just,
I don't know.
it's got no soul, you know?
Yeah.
Like
You're
embossed.
analog.
Yeah. Analog.
You need to be able to read them when the lights are off, you know.
Right. Exactly. And so anyway, so yeah, I've been doing that, Mike. I've been like, sort of like, if something's not working the way I think it should work, I'm just taking a moment. And it doesn't take as much time as you would think. Like a lot of times, like I thought it was going to really like kill my flow or, you know, whatever. But it's like, no, it felt good because you get it organized, you get it sorted, and then you're like, okay, good, let's move on. And so it's happening less and less now. So I figure that's how I know I'm getting close.
Right. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. You can only get a shop so close until you start using it. And then that's going to start to inform the rest. And Ben, you're sort of the master of detailing your shop. You're always drawing cool little hieroglyphics of what's in different drawers and that kind of stuff.
You know, I'm not a pro, you know, and I have come to accept the fact that part of what I love about woodworking is setting my shop up and having my space or this place organized and aesthetically pleasing to me. So yeah, I draw little pictures on the front of the drawers, and I spend a lot of time organizing. Ironically, up until now, like this week, most of my video and audio equipment has just been like out in the world. And then I think I saw you. I had one.
I tagged you.
Yeah. Well, I had one T-stack that was dedicated to like bringing camera equipment on the road with me. And then I saw that. I was like, you know what? I've got another one. And I'm starting to do that as well. But the other day I opened up my SketchUp drawing of my shop layout before I actually moved into my shop. But it was like, you know, sitting on the couch and organizing my shop and laying out tools. And I sent it to Barry. I said, look at this. And he goes, oh my God, nothing is where you thought it was going to be. And I have gone through 3 iterations of moving all of my machines around. And I thought I had it where it worked. And then all of a sudden, this became my work from home office. Okay, this needs to move and that needs to move. And then I realized that my joiner, which was my least used tool, was way too prominently placed in my shop. So that had to be moved to the back where I, you know, when I use it, it's there, but it's never ending for me. Like right now, there is one horizontal surface that is always piled with stuff. And
just one?
I'm pretty good about it and about the rest of them. Because I have to take Instagram pictures over here and I can only hide so many spots. So this weekend coming up or next week, I've got some vacation time to kill. And that's one of the things I want to do. And I might actually like put machines on it or like sanders on it or something to make it so I can't put stuff there. But I just keep identifying one element that is the worst element at any given point. A couple weeks ago, it was this shelf area over here that I wound up, you know, taking a night and just building some just one by shelves to organize some stuff. But I try not to think of the shop when it's time to organize and better it as like, I need to make my whole shop better.
Right. Yeah.
I need to make that area better right now.
Right.
Right.
And you do that one, and then the next bad area rears its head. But I don't think it'll ever stop. I told Barry, if my shop ever gets to the point where I'm happy with it, I think that's nirvana, and I'm just going to keel over. Because like, there's so much joy for me that comes from making this place what it is. And like, if I ever like ran out of things to better in here, I don't know if I'd like that.
You know, it's interesting. You talk a little bit about aesthetics. Like, some of my most favorite shops are the ones that are aesthetically pleasing to me. Yet I never, ever did that in my own shop, right? Because I never made the time to do that.
Yeah.
And so this time, like, I painted the walls something other than Builder Beige. You know, like I did, you know, I have artwork hung up. Yeah. I've got posters. I've got a picture of my dad. I've got like all of these things that are like all over the shop that are kind of like make it my shop.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the first time really that I've done that. And that has made a huge difference just in my enjoyment of the space. And, you know, it just adds like another level of sort of satisfaction for me.
Yeah. Mike, do you, if all of a sudden you had to empty your shop, like, but you have to empty your shop and reorganize it. Do you know what you would like? Would you move things? Because your shop is tight. You have a small shop with a lot packed in it. Is there something that you would change? If it wasn't a pain?
I actually had to do that once, and I never want to do that again. But what I did find when I had to like completely clear out my shop and rented a little pod for storage and all that kind of stuff while I did the floors and walls and ceiling and insulation.
I was just going to say, why did you do that?
Yeah, just to basically turn it from a crappy garage into a really nice shop. I would say at least a quarter of the things that came out never made it back in.
Mm.
So I would do it just for the sake of pull everything out. Okay, now what do you really want back in here? Because once it's there, you don't go through the trouble of saying, I want to get rid of it. But once it's not there, it's easier to say, do I even want this in here now? And so I think I just need to clean my shop because it's a small shop, and the more cluttered it gets, the smaller it gets. And you'll get something stupid, a bin or a travel case or something from a class, and it's just like sitting in a corner, and the mindset is that, well, I'm going to teach that again for 6 months, so I don't have to put this away right now. Or if it's a box, you know, left over from unpacking something, and then by happenstance you actually move it, and suddenly you have like one more square foot of floor space in your shop, and it makes a huge difference. So I would just say my shop is getting too small at the moment, and on like many, many different levels. So I think it's just a matter of get it out and then see what comes back in. So,
see, I have to do the floors in my shop are, I don't know who poured them, but oh man, you can actually feel the inclines as you walk around. So part of what I want to do is exactly that: rent a pod, push everything out into the pod, and then have it like leveled. And then at that time, I'll do like whatever I decide, because I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to put like rubber floor in, or if I'm going to put wood in, or if I'm going to, whatever.
Right.
But I'm not looking forward to that because it just, and then how do you woodwork? I'll do it in the summertime, and I can just pull out my little spoon carving kit, and I can just whittle and watch people, I'm not going to level the floor myself. I don't have the expertise for that. Right. And I have no desire to learn it. And so those are one of those things that I just throw some money at it, and it'll just happen magically.
The best kinds of things.
Yeah.
I recently attached my little bench to the table saw. So it's like, firmly attached, outfeed table that stops walking all over the place. And I did that, and then I put a board over it, and it was rocking in the middle. I was like, oh no. So I leveled the workbench. I was like, is the table saw that out of level? And it is in some spot on my slab that I literally had to use an 1.25 inch piece of wood to shim one side of the table saw base, which is 2 feet long, really, right? And it was like, wow, it is that out of level. But it's really nice now that the bench doesn't move, and it's I highly recommend doing that.
I mean, the advantage is that the stock stays up against the fence, I guess, when you've got
gravity working in your favor. Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, I think that about does it for this episode. If you have any questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. Give Vic a follow on Instagram, right? Vic Teslin. You're on that TikTok thing now?
So Andrea has been really helping me out with like social media stuff and things like that because she's able to do it a lot more consistently than I am. And so she wanted to give it a try, and I'm like, okay, like I think I'm like too old to be on TikTok. When I told my 21-year-old daughter that I was on TikTok, she was like, oh yeah. So it's like, but anyway.
Is there anything going on there? Do I need to?
So I'll tell you, like, it's really cool what you can create within the TikTok sphere. So if you like playing around with like editing and stuff like that, like you can do a lot of cool stuff. Some of the most ignorant and awful people lurk there. And like, I had posted something and some guy, don't know him, don't whatever, like, what kind of an effing idiot does that? And I'm like,
this kind of an idiot.
This one right here. Yeah. But it's like, you get a lot of that. And you know, like, I don't know if it's like 14-year-olds trolling or like whatever, but so I shut the comments off on it, but then realized when you do that, you know, the thing doesn't grow, but then it's like, do I care? You know, but anyway, so I don't have like, I have to develop a thicker skin for that kind of stuff. Like, I don't get hurt. I get mad. Because it's like, why would you say, like, I would never say to somebody that I don't know.
Yes.
Like, I would never speak to somebody that way. I wouldn't speak to, like, most people that way. And so that we've gotten this sort of situation where it's like people would just, like, say completely rude and ignorant things. It's like, I immediately go into, like, Vic 20 years ago in the Army mode, and it's like, flip the desk and go find them. Right? And I don't like that. I didn't like it back then, and I don't like it now. I don't like that somebody can make me feel that way. And so but that's one of the things when you put yourself out there, right? Yeah. You're open to critique, and it's not always constructive, and it's not always, you know, it's not always nice, you know, so.
Yeah. I always wonder, how did you even construe that I'm like soliciting critiques by posting something, you know?
Right. And that's the thing. It's like people feel like they need to comment whether they know anything about the situation or not. Yeah. And it's like, you know, actually, Mike, I learned and I don't even know if you remember this, I learned a really valuable lesson about dealing with that from you at one of the Fine Woodworking live events. And I think you did a talk on how you use your block plane. And so I thought, wow, this is cool. I want to see how Mike uses his block plane. So I sat in the class, and
he just wings it at people who critique his work.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's so compact and dense. No aluminum virgins here, boys. No, so some guy in the audience, and like, you hear the tone, you hear it's like, well, have you ever thought about doing it like this? Right? And I don't know if you remember this or not, Mike, but you You stopped what you were doing. You had a block plane in your hand. You put the block plane down, and then you got this sort of pensive look on your face. And there was dead silence. And then the next thing that came out of your mouth was, no. and then you carried on. And it's like the guy, and then I looked over at the guy, and the guy completely deflated. Because it was like he was trying to show like, oh, I know something more than Mike Pekovich. And then you were just like, no, I never thought of doing that.
Wow.
He does that in meetings too.
And I thought, like, because like when you engage in sort of a back and forth, I don't know where I heard this saying, but it's like wrestling a pig. You may win, but you're going to get dirty.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't want to get dirty. I don't want to argue with you. It's like, this is how I do it. You do it however you want. This is how I do it. If you don't like how I do it, then follow somebody else.
Yes, exactly.
Because my satisfaction in life isn't hinged around whether or not people like what I'm doing.
Right.
Right. I do what I do because I like doing it. And, and I put it out there. And if other people like it, great. If you don't, great.
You still like it. That's the that's the fallback. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
The one that I have I have taken to, unless somebody is actively asking for suggestions or something, I really do everything I can to not say anything.
Of course. Yeah.
Other than looks great, I posted about one time, I love the little crazy glue bottles. I have spent lots and lots of money on crazy glue, but this little one that you buy for $1 at the hardware store, and it's working great for me. Just if you're struggling I don't even think if you're struggling, it was just, I love this. I've tried the expensive stuff, and it was dozens of comments of saying, well, you should really use this one, or you should really use that one, or I use this. And it's like, I don't care. I told you I have tried that.
I even trolled you on that one. I said you should use hide glue.
You did. But it's like, if I'm coming in here and saying, I love this thing, and you're coming in saying, no, mine's better.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why do you have to do that? Why? Yes. What is going on? What is wrong with you?
Well, isn't that society right now as it is? Like nobody can just respect what a person is enjoying doing or wants to do, or even more delicate things like religion and politics and all that other stuff.
You have to do mine.
No, mine's better.
Yeah.
Well, is it? It's what you like to do. It doesn't mean it's what I like to do. But it's just everybody wants to push their own agenda, and it's like, why can't we just I love the reason I like Instagram is like, I see something that Mike's doing, or I see something that you're doing, and I'm like looking through and I'm like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And I may not do it, right? Or I may not be into it, but I'm going to like your photo because I like you. And, and if it's something that really speaks to me, I'll send a little note saying, hey, that's really cool, or, oh, that's really neat. But whatever happened to if you've got nothing nice to say,
just keep scrolling.
Just shut up.
Just keep scrolling, man.
Yeah, it's anyway. I don't know. Yeah. I don't understand it.
On that note,
come and follow me. Just don't be a jerk about it.
Subscribe and click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.
Was that the outro? Are we done?
I guess so.
I think that worked.
I'm only saying it once. No, what you got, Mike?
Oh, I was just going to say, I, tend to try to grow a thicker skin about that kind of stuff. But one woodworker I know and respect, we all know, I won't mention his name. He had posted this beautiful piece of furniture he'd been working on. And someone said, nah, I really don't know if that wood combination is right. And it's just like, I didn't know whether to start a flame war with this person, in the public comments. Instead, I just direct messaged the woodworker himself. I said, just shut up. Don't listen to anybody. Your work is fantastic, and don't worry about it. And it's like one thing when it happens to me, I can brush it off. But when I see it happen to other people, I think that's the thing where that's when I get fighting mad. It's like, you don't mess with this guy because he knows what he's doing.
Especially design things and wood selection or whatever, like just shut up. Don't say the thing. Just move on with your life. No, if somebody is not actively saying, do you like this combination of wood? Just scroll on, man. Oh, why can't people do that? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And again, like if you start to get into, like, you see it all the time on Instagram on various topics, or not Instagram, but usually Facebook is where it really is prevalent. But it's like, then you get these flame wars going back and forth. And like by the second comment or third comment, it's like, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what are you guys even talking about now?
Or they've forgotten that you're still in the room and they're actually commenting like on your post, and it's
right.
more like,
yeah, take it outside, folks.
Yes, exactly. Oh well. Other than that, Instagram's great.
You know, there's a certain section or segment of people who don't realize that I'm the guy who reads all of the fine woodworking comments. So
right.
when you YouTube comment, can we get a new host? Like, no, I'm reading that. I'm reading that, people. This isn't like some backdoor conversation you're having.
Oh, that's fun. Well, now that I know that you're the guy who reads them all, I'm going to start commenting more, I think.
So what's up with
this
Ben
joker?
guy? Yes.
Oh, well. All right. Back in 2 weeks on another episode. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe.
If you love this podcast, you'll love Fine Woodworking Unlimited. Access more than 40 years of articles, how-to videos, and project plans designed to take your craft to the next level. Check it out. So with GarageBand, can you add like a cool little drum track to your audio?
You can, yeah. I could do like fart sounds.
Well, I didn't know you needed GarageBand for that.
No, well, I mean, it's hard sometimes because it's not always consistent.